Dragon Ball Z, Kakarot, released January of 2020. Available on all modern platforms, retailing for $59.99. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is an action RPG. It follows a portion of the story of Dragon Ball, starting at the point that Raditz shows up, and ending with the finishing of Majin Buu. And if you're at all familiar with Dragon Ball, you know there's a lot in between those 2 points, and you will play through every major plot point. And despite being called Kakarot, you will only control him, aka Goku, some of the time, as depending where you're at in the story, you might be controlling Gohan, or Vegeta, or Trunks, or Piccolo, and you might be accompanied by other characters, sometimes other player characters, or sometimes just extra guys in your party like Tien and Krellin. Incidentally, you can tell how important a character is by how big their skill tree is. And of course, you won't be surprised to learn that most of the major plot points are simply fights with characters, which are done in a kind of simplified version of what the Tenkaichi games did years ago. Truth be told, most of the story fights are not terribly hard unless you are just only doing the story missions. As after all, this is an action RPG where you can level up, and if you're not just mainlining the story, there is a lot of extra things to do here that can lead to you gaining levels, and also giving you other various bonuses. As you are in a fairly large, fairly open world that is broken down into areas that will absolutely be familiar to any Dragon Ball fan. And you can fly around fairly freely in this world, collecting orbs to fill out character skill trees. You can also collect food and other items. You can cook that food into banquets that give you temporary stat bonuses. The non-food items are used to build vehicles, which are in no way important to the story, but you can do races with the vehicles. Other than that, the vehicles are almost entirely pointless, since all the characters you can control can fly. And of course, while you're flying around, you can encounter various enemies to fight. They will give you experience, and orbs, and sometimes items. In fact, the amount of orbs you get from fighting makes collecting them out in the world almost completely pointless. In addition to that, you can also fish. And you can train. In fact, if you want to unlock all of the skill trees for characters, you will have to train at various points. But a lot of the training is locked by story progression. The last thing you can do on maps is find side stories. They are blue on the map as opposed to the orange for main story missions. These are mostly just to level up with. Occasionally they do provide an answer to something that's never been addressed within the main story. For example, one of them addresses why there are various animal people wandering about the Dragon Ball world. These also serve to let you know what characters that aren't involved with the main story are doing. If you're a fan, these can be mildly interesting, but they're mostly just here to give you experience. And both story and side missions will occasionally give you soul emblems. Soul emblems are little pictures of characters. When arranged onto several charts, they impart various bonuses to your characters. You can improve these emblems by giving them gifts, and by arranging them together in specific ways, you can get greater bonuses, like putting Goku and Gohan together for a father-son bonus, or putting the entire Ginyu Force next to each other. This can be an interesting distraction. However, much like with cooking food, the bonuses imparted are not really big enough to mean much. Speaking of not meaning very much, you can also, at various points, collect the Dragon Balls. The map shows you exactly where they're at, and there's a limited number of locations they can be anyway. But once you find all 7, you can make a wish. Or more than one, depending where you're at in the story. However, there's only 4 things the Dragon Balls can actually do. They can give you a lot of money, so you can buy healing items and a very limited number of other items. They can give you a huge amount of orbs, which can be very useful if you don't feel like doing any grinding. You can ask for rare items, which will give you some of the harder to find cooking ingredients, as well as some items to improve your soul emblems. And the last thing you can do with the Dragon Balls is ask it to bring back someone you've already defeated in the story. This lets you fight them again, and will usually result in you getting their soul emblem. So there's a great amount of extra content to do outside of the main story. It just so happens that outside of gaining some experience, most of it doesn't really matter. And the actual main story fights are generally fairly easy unless you did absolutely no leveling. And like a lot of Dragon Ball video games, you have to win fights that are actually lost in the source material. That's in no way a problem unique to this game, but it's something that annoys me whenever I see it happen. And there is also an issue of balance with the characters you control at different points, as Vegeta and Trunks get moves where they can throw a huge ball of energy out that will wipe out a whole group of enemies in one move. And if spammed, will just end any story fight. But Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, they don't get moves like that. So later in the game, when you have to use characters that don't have those kind of moves, it really makes the game kinda drag at that point. So is Dragon Ball Z Kakarot worth your time and money? Well, it is a very long game, being, say, 40 to 50 hours depending on how much of the side content interests you, and possibly longer than that if you really get into assembling the soul emblems in their optimum configuration on the charts, and cooking every single recipe, and filling out even the side characters' skill trees. But the thing is, if you're not already a fan of the Dragon Ball franchise, I don't think any of this is going to have any interest for you. And even if you are a Dragon Ball fan, like I personally am, you already know what's going to happen in this game beat for beat. There are a few things that are changed in a very minor way because this is a video game, but not enough to actually take you by surprise. Some of the side content actually really shines, filling in details that have not been addressed anywhere else, but not every side mission is of the same quality. A lot of them are either a fetch quest, or this monster is attacking this person. Fight the monster. So I really cannot recommend Dragon Ball Z Kakarot for anyone, certainly not at a $60 price point. However, if you are a die-hard Dragon Ball fan, I would recommend this game when you see it on sale. On your various digital storefronts, this game goes on sale for $15. I've even seen the deluxe version that comes with the DLC for as low as $22. And when you see those price points, that is the only time I would recommend picking up Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Outside of that, there are much better games related to the Dragon Ball franchise, and certainly much better action RPGs. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and tell your friends.